Hey everybody, it's Ken and Danielle,
Hello.
and I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Chris Martenson. Chris, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back here with both you, Ken and Danielle. Good to see you again.
So let's jump in. I know a lot of people are focused on the CPIs, and of course, a lot of the Fed decisions are made on the CPI. This is a real estate channel, but it appears to me that the CPI is the most watered down index that we could be looking at, and of course, it's changed. So first, let's dive into that a little bit, and let's talk about the repercussions of looking at some of the other indexes.
Yeah, so CPI, Consumer Price Index, it actually sets out to do, I think, an impossible task, which to ask and answer a single question for everybody in the country, which is, what's your rate of inflation? Now, obviously, if I'm living in Topeka, Kansas, I might have a different rate of inflation than if I'm living in downtown San Francisco or I'm living in rural Alabama. So there is no one number, right? So when we talk about the CPI, it's always talked about as if it's the nation's inflation rate, but it's not. It has to, by definition, it has to be some amalgam. So there's that. Second, when you dig back through history and you look at this thing, it's a political number, right? It's a very politicized number. The politicians care about it because they want inflation to appear low, because that makes it look like they're doing their jobs, and it's a calming sort of a thing to say inflation is low. But also, realistically, they have these things called cost of living adjustments, COLAs, right? If inflation's 8% instead of 3%, that is an extra 5 big points that are going out the door forever, because COLAs only go up, not down. They would have huge budgetary impacts from that. So everybody wants inflation to appear low. Every president wants it. It's not a Republican versus Democrat thing. They've tortured this CPI to the point where it doesn't reflect anybody's reality. Right now, they're telling us inflation is 3%. Nobody you talk to who goes shopping, who's been to the grocery store or paid an insurance bill or seen their property taxes this year, nobody would tell you they're experiencing that. Nobody, not even the rural Alabaman versus the Topeka versus San Francisco. So that's the nature of it. My simple summary is this. It's like the CPI, that's our altimeter in this story, and we're pilots, and our altimeter is misreading by about half where it should be, right? And we're going through some mountainous territory right now. So bad instrumentation leads to bad sort of outcomes usually.
So I very much notice the inflation through the grocery store, because to Ken's point, I buy the same things almost every week. And I can tell you my grocery bills went up over 50% since the beginning of COVID till now. Those things, I mean, you can't pull the wool over people's eyes and say it's 3% or 5% or anything like that, because anybody that pays any attention, and you can't really cut back on groceries. You can substitute and you can swap out things, but it's not like clothing or something that you can just buy less of. You go there every week. So you're definitely going to notice those prices and gas prices too.
Yeah, and we're figuring something else out too, which is that the cost of eating cheaply is very expensive when you factor in the downstream lack of health that comes from that now. People are starting to realize that our standard American diet, the SAD diet, which, a lot of heavily processed foods. I saw a chart the other day that showed processed food consumption. The United States is right at the top of that chart compared to all of Europe. And then you overlay health outcomes, and it's like a perfect overlay, right? The Italians have the least amount of or very low processed foods. They have some better health outcomes overall. So it's actually expensive to eat cheaply.
What are some things people can do today to stay ahead of this? I think probably 7% plus inflation.
Yeah, I've got some specific answers, but first let me back up. I want to step back a tiny bit here, or a lot. This is one of these Wayne Gretzky moments, right, where we're going to try and skate to where the puck is going to be. And we really only have 2 places where the puck is going to go. It's either going to go towards deflation or inflation. That is, do you think the Federal Reserve is just going to back up and let things collapse and let debts really, this is where debt's a stone cold killer in a deflation, right? Because the economy goes down and there's cash is hard to come by, and your debt still needs servicing. That's not good. But I don't think that's a very likely outcome at all, because all of history, all of everything, my whole adult life, but humans always look for the easy way out. Printing is way easier than going down this deflationary path. So just as a starting point, I'm giving you an answer for somebody who's convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that when push comes to shove, they're going to print more, right? We had Jerome Powell with Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, the senator, asking him a question going, hey, Jerome, this chart of, look at all this debt of the federal government. Is this sustainable? And Jerome Powell openly said, no. By definition, it's not sustainable because our debts are growing faster than the underlying economy, which is GDP in this story. All right, what do? You just, like, if the government is now spending 6.5% of GDP, if they went suddenly to zero, we'd lose 6.5% of GDP. Like, that's a capital R recession bordering on the D thing, right? So what are they going to do? That's the first question everybody's got to resolve. Print or no print? I think they're going to print. So my answer is that everybody needs to be prepared for just more and more and more inflation. So anything you can do to sort of fix your costs today at a very retail level, like something that Evie and I do in our own household, is you just pre-buy stuff, right? So here's a prediction. Buy the sort of things that you might eat that save, canned goods or anything like that, something you can put in your freezer. And in a year, you're going to be surprised at that price. You're going to go, a can of tuna was only what? It's like one of those things. And I'm doing all sorts of like capital improvements on my house now, does the water heater need replacing? Is there anything you can do to replace windows, insulation, things that would cost you more money if, in the future potentially. So those are simple sort of defensive things. This is what people do in inflationary environments. You want to spend it while it still has today's purchasing power.
One of the things I love from you, I credit you all the time on this, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and I don't explain it. There's no way I can explain it as well as you. If you could do that, it'd be super helpful to the listeners because it's a really good visual for me, and I think it really makes a solid point.
Yeah, this is a piece of thinking that again, that framing I talk about, that what is wealth, right? And so the problem for most people like me is that I'm surrounded daily by all this advertising and noise that tells me that wealth is money, right? It's how much currency do you have? That's not it. So real wealth, when we think about it, can be broken down into 3 layers. The bottom layer, that's the tier 1. That's what we call primary wealth. So let's imagine you're a North African country and all you have is sand and there's no oil under that sand. You are a poor nation no matter how well you organize yourself because you don't have any primary wealth. Like what? Thick seams of coal, oil in the ground, resources, lots of abundant fresh water, soil that you can grow things on. That's your primary wealth. And then secondary wealth or tier 2 wealth, well, that's where people organize around that primary wealth. So farms open up and become farm stands and trees get turned into lumber and ore becomes maybe steel piping. That second layer only has value if you have the first layer, right? You can't turn trees into lumber if you don't have any trees. So primary wealth is really important. That first tier, you have to have it. Some countries are really blessed with it, some aren't. United States, super blessed. So you got that primary wealth, then you have the secondary wealth. And then the tertiary wealth, the third tier in this thing, well, this is just the claims we put on it, right? This is currency and all of, all the derivatives and all the paper games we play.
ETFs, stocks, all that stuff is in
all of it.
Tier 3, yep.
All the paper. I mean, we'd make it simple. Let's put the 3 of us on a deserted island, right? And what would you rather have? Like, a big old stack of derivative contracts or, a crate of bananas, right? It's very obvious, that these things, the money only has value because we can do something with it, right? Right now, once the money's lost value, you can go to Venezuela and there's like currency blowing up the street because it's not even worth picking up, right? It doesn't have value. So as long as we understand that the primary value is first and second tiers, period. The rest of it are the claims we put on it. So quick example, from 1918 to 1923, you had this German hyperinflation, right? We're all at a whole Austrian inflation. We're used to people, the pictures of people with the wheelbarrows of cash, stuffing it into the furnaces, right? And they always talk about this as that period of time and say, oh, what a great wealth destruction. It was a huge wealth destruction. There were people who were like, their houses doubled in value and they sold because they're like, oh my gosh, look at all the money I get back out of this thing. And they got ruined because a year later they were 10 times higher. And a year later they were 100 times higher. But watch what happened. They say wealth got destroyed. That's not true. There were just as many houses, bridges, factories, hotels, roads, arable acres of land before and after this great paper explosion. But what did happen, Ken and Daniil, is who owned that? Now that changed because the people who saw that coming and were a little bit, didn't get caught up in the story, they actually made out like bandits. There's an apocryphal story of a bellhop having had a gold coin somehow stashed away and was able to buy the entire hotel he worked at because this was now worth 100 trillion marks or whatever, and paid off the hotel. So this is a period of time I think we're coming up on where if you play it right, I think there's this is when generational wealth is made and lost.
Chris, as always, thanks, brother. I appreciate you and can't wait to have you on again soon.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Daniil.